Ladies and gentlemen, we're back. I'm here with Bishop. We're at the Hermitage where I did the dark meditation retreat. I was in the dark room. I was actually set for about 5 days, but I lasted like 25 hours. It was pretty intense. And actually, Bishop's done it for a couple days, so
Mm.
she's a little more of a pro than I am. But I just want to talk about the experience and how it felt, so other people can know how it feels and they can actually come here and do it.
Yeah.
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 So it was, you're right, it was unlike anything I've ever done before.
Yeah.
Um, what happened is one of the main things that I noticed when I got out, I didn't really realize until the day after, my olfactory, my sense of smell has come back. That's kind of strange for me because I really don't smell. Like, I never really pay attention to smells.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Or I don't know if it was way before COVID. Something had to be very, very, very
Okay.
potent for me to smell it.
So you're saying your sense of smell wasn't really turned on before you went in, like it was hard for you to smell things before you
Yes.
went into the dark.
Yes.
And now you're noticing you smell more, your sense of smell.
My sense of smell, I'm acutely aware of it.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, that's definitely something. Like when I'm in the bathroom, before the first 2 days, I couldn't smell anything. When I was in the bathroom, it's
Yeah.
a co-ed bathroom, by the way, and now I can smell the different senses in the
Yeah.
bathroom.
It's also a compost toilet, by the way.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a sense of smell to it, that I wasn't really aware of. Now, when I'm walking down the street and like there's this girl that walks by me, I can smell the perfume. When her hair is by me, I can smell that. When I'm in a different area, I
Yeah.
can sense things. So when I was I mean, I wasn't in there that long. I lasted a little bit over a day, but I feel like it triggered something in my brain.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the fact that I couldn't really rely on my sense of, you know, vision or really my hearing, I feel like my sense of smell, it's triggered that. So it's opened that up, which is
That's
actually, yeah, it's actually trippy. I was telling one of my friends that's a doctor earlier today, and he's like, "That's really interesting, bro. What do you think? What are your thoughts on that?"
Well, I think this is interesting about the senses. Obviously, when we're going without any stimulus to our senses well, it's not completely non-sensory, right? But when you're really eliminating one, it heightens the others.
It
And
does.
so coming out, I know that one of our guests a couple months ago that came in for I think a 3 day or 4 day dark retreat, he was having issues with his eyesight. Like was always wearing sunglasses, like really he messed his eyesight up a couple years ago and just super super sensitive. When he came out, yeah, he was still, of course, it takes a while. When you come out, your eyes have to readjust to the light
Hmm.
after not being in the light for so long. And what he started to notice that not completely quote unquote healed his eyesight, but it was like 50% better.
Really?
His eyesight.
That's
Yeah.
a big difference. What do you mean, 50%?
Yeah,
That's hella big.
it's huge, right? So I don't know. I mean, when you ask me, what are your thoughts on that? I really I don't know what happens in there, right? But I do know that when we take away a sense and we are really able to come into full parasympathetic mode, that healing, that rest and digest, there's so much that can happen in our body and kind of recalibrate, rebalance.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely did that for me, for
Really
my brain.
interesting about the nose though. I'm the
Yeah.
sense that's I've never heard
Yeah.
that before.
No.
No.
And I've broken my nose before. I've gotten nose surgery just to like help with sleeping. But I think that might have like triggered it, or I stopped smelling things.
Yeah.
But it's definitely come back. So hey, I mean, if I went in there and I didn't do the whole thing, I left with an extra sense. That's a victory,
Yeah.
right? Like, hey, who doesn't want to have an extra sense?
Yeah.
That's something that really stood out to me. Another thing is, dude, it's so dark in there. It's like dark. It's called the dark retreat
Yeah.
for a reason. It is so dark where I was
It's pitch black.
meditating. Yeah, it's pitch black,
Yeah.
and I've never felt that before. Because even when your eyes are closed, you feel some light.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell if my eyes were closed or open when I was meditating. I don't know if that's happened to you. Yeah,
Yeah,
she's nodding her
you
head.
can't tell the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And another thing is my thoughts were starting to fade. You know how when you have like a mental image of something that's happened, those were starting to trickle away. And this
Mm.
is all within 24 hours. So
Mm.
that was really interesting. It was calming. Actually, the first night I did have some scary thoughts of like ghosts and like clowns. But then I was like, hey, why am I having this? It's like, oh, my brain is trying to like tactically get me out of this situation.
Sure.
And I was like, no, just accept it. And I went to sleep. I woke up in the dark. It was cool. And then that night, I was like, I don't really want to do this anymore. So I
Yeah.
kind of let myself out. But yeah, that was me.
So curious if you don't mind
Nah,
sharing,
I mean, what do you mean?
because
We're on this podcast. Go right
yeah,
ahead.
I feel like what you went through, your experience, me just knowing what I know is so important for people to hear. And I just want to backtrack. I hope people listen to the first episode that are listening to
Yeah,
this,
yeah,
because we talked about a lot about expectations,
yeah,
and that every single person's journey is so unique and exactly what they need and not always what they want, right?
yeah. That's very true.
And so I'm curious,
That's what I
like,
was thinking about.
yeah, can you
So
explain a little bit
okay,
about what happened, what you experienced
so what
before
I
you came out?
what I wanted, my intention was honestly, I just want to have a full blown psychedelic experience,
Yes.
and I didn't really have that because that's what I wanted. That's not what I needed. Yes,
That is so important.
yeah, that is. It's not a total failure. It's like actually like
No, it's a
successful.
huge
Yeah,
win.
yeah, it's definitely a win since I got my
Mm,
sense of smell back. Um,
yeah.
what it is I mean I don't do plant medicine or any like other medicines or drugs, whatever you want to call it. So I was like, oh, okay, if I do sensory deprivation, it might trigger some psychedelic experience. And I really thought about it, and I'm like, do I really, really need that in my life? And the answer was no. Like it was actually towards the very end, because I was completely fine. I mean, like I didn't have like a full panic attack, but I was like a little nervous at the end. But I was like, do I really need that in my life? And the answer was completely no. And then I was like, wait, why am I even in here then? And it was like, okay, just get to know yourself a little more. But you're absolutely right. It gave you what you need, not what you want. And I guess what I need is my sense of smell back.
Mm-hmm. And that, if you don't mind
I don't mind.
going there, about the when you came out and you had said, yeah, I basically just had a panic attack,
Yeah.
and you had never had one in your life.
Um, it wasn't. I wasn't. It wasn't a panic attack, but I got like really, really nervous.
Yeah.
And then, but it was. It wasn't nervous about me being in there. It was me nervous about like just missing this week on the lake or not being able to go to Antigua. Um, I wasn't really in the present moment. I was thinking more about the future, which was something that got to me. And now that I meditate and I think about it more, I was like, why did I even have those thoughts when I should have been in the present moment?
Mm.
So I was thinking more about the future tense and
Yeah.
how life might pass me by. And that's what actually didn't give me
Mm.
a panic. It wasn't a full blown panic attack, but it was like I got super nervous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That anxiety
Yeah, it was
started.
definitely anxiety, which I really don't have.
Yeah.
So it gave me that anxiety, which is something I need to work on. I talked to my other friend that's done it, and she's like, "Yeah, maybe you should work on your shadows." I'm like, yeah, yeah,
No. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, maybe I
And
should.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I should. But I
Mm.
definitely want to try it, and it was just like, unlike anything else, like you were definitely in your thoughts. Surprisingly, my thoughts weren't bad. Like they weren't guiding me to a bad place. I wasn't having negative thoughts, but I'm just like a very hyper person, and that energy has to go somewhere. And you're there. I was trying to put it within, but I didn't know how long I was meditating and what was going on. So I was like, all right, it's time for me to get out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what would you say besides your sense, your nose? What would you say is, because I saw in your, for those of you that don't know, every time someone comes here, we have them fill out, obviously a contract and then
Yeah,
an
yeah, yeah.
intention. And do you remember what you wrote down on the intention?
Just chill, right?
You wrote down, know thyself.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I got to know myself a little more.
So yeah, can you share
Yeah,
what you felt? What would you say is your biggest takeaway around that intention of know thyself in those 24 hours?
my biggest intention is
Your takeaway.
um I like being more outdoors and just being more around people and just being more sociable and just being isolated like that and just being in the dark is something I've never experienced. So I can train myself to do it. Do I want to come back and do it? Yes, I want to come back and do like the 3 days. Definitely. And yeah, that's that I'm very sociable. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
I
Well,
want, yeah, go ahead.
yeah. It's. I'm like I want to come and conquer, but it's like conquering myself because there's a saying where it goes, if you could conquer the enemies from within, no enemy from without can cause you harm. That's a famous saying from
Mm.
Africa. They don't know who said it, but it's very famous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I do want to come back, and that's probably one thing. Like, I'm very sociable and hyper, and yeah, it was a lot. It felt time was going by a lot slower, a lot slower. Like, you don't understand. It's like, just like, it's not like, oh, let me open up my laptop and watch something. It's like, oh nope, you're just in there, and you
Yeah.
don't know what time it is. And I think, like, I didn't even notice when dinner came because I think I was like out. Um, and then I was like, wait, dinner's already here, and I took a couple showers, and it was just different.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm thankful to have eyes and see. So I was like, this is how blind people live. Like, this sucks. It does. It does, not having your visual senses
Yeah.
or not being able to exercise them.
Sure, it brought up a lot of gratitude when you came out
Big time,
that
big time.
night.
Actually, when I opened the first door, because there's two doors, I saw a little bit of light, and I was like, oh, thank God. And I just stared at it for like 10 minutes. And I appreciated that light,
Mm.
like the sun, Mother Nature. And then, like, after 10 minutes, when my eyes got acclimated, then I opened the door.
Mm.
And I was like, okay, cool, like, I'm good. And I saw your face, and you were smiling, and you're like, oh, what is he doing now? You jetted down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to touch on something you said. I think this is could not be more important. And when you're with your intention of know thyself and what you just said when I asked what your biggest takeaway was, and you said, yeah, I like being around people. I'm a really sociable person. I'm hyper. The anxiety came up. Like I lasted 24 hours, and then, I mean, you didn't say this exactly, but basically I needed to come out.
Yeah, I needed
And
to come out.
that I hope that, like, I would wish this upon everyone to hear these phrases of I needed, because I think we are, especially in the spiritual development world, personal development, we're always like pushing ourselves and I will conquer this, and this very masculine energy, which I don't mean man, I mean a masculine
Right, right,
energy,
right,
right?
right.
Of
Like,
like,
dominating it,
yes,
dominating your mission or something like that.
exactly, I'm going to push myself to my limits. And there is absolute value in that, of pushing ourselves to our zone of discomfort, 100%. And also, it is so important to know that these types of medicines, like the dark,
Hmm.
like plant medicine, like psychedelics, they are not for everyone
Yeah.
in that time. And sometimes something that worked for someone so well is not the other person's medicine. And so the fact that you said, yeah, I didn't it wasn't serving me, basically, is what
Yeah,
you
it wasn't.
said, right? It's
Yeah, it
like
definitely wasn't.
to have that amount of anxiety and almost near panic
Yeah.
attack is kind of a cue to say, hey, maybe this isn't working right now for me, and that's okay, and not to push yourself into dysregulation. And for those that have listened to the previous episode, we talked a little bit about the nervous system, and that's really the work that I do, somatics and the nervous system and trauma. And it is so important to not put yourself in situations that you are constantly putting yourself outside of your window of tolerance, they call it,
Hmm.
which really means your capacity to be present. That doesn't mean don't challenge yourself, but it also doesn't mean don't put yourself in situations where you are going to basically traumatize your nervous system.
Yeah.
And that's just, I see so many people doing that with modalities now, of like traumatizing their nervous system and calling it healing and pushing past resistance. And it's just, it's so nuanced. And I just think that what you've experienced is so important for people to hear, of when you're trying these modalities and things in the dark and, all these different ways of healing, quote unquote. It's so important to listen to your body.
Yeah.
And Karup, I just want to say, like, that's exactly what you did. You challenged yourself and you listened to your body. You said, this isn't for me right now. In the future, maybe. Right now, no.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it sounds some other people, and like, wait, have you done like 10-day silent meditations? I was like, no, man, I haven't done anything. And they're like, really? You just gonna jump in there? I was like, yeah, I'll just see what happens. I want to try it.
Mm,
I just want to try it.
yeah.
There's no, I think the biggest loss is if I didn't try it. If I
Yeah.
tried it and I was like, all right, cool, I tried it, I lasted a day, that's cool. I could live with that. But the fact that, like, fear prevents you from trying something is that's definitely like a failure. So
I really honor you for
yeah,
giving it a try.
yeah, I'll try it again.
And also, this is why these experiences, like this is why we have questionnaires in the beginning as
Hmm.
well. Did you fill out a questionnaire
Yeah,
about the dark?
I mean, they were asking me if I had like depression and other things like that,
Okay.
and the answer
Or
was no.
meditation background? Did we ask that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
I meditate every day for like 2 hours, but
Okay.
2 hours is like, what about
That's
the
not
other
very
12 hours? What am I
exactly.
gonna do? Like, you're in there, like you don't understand, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
When you're in there, first, if you're seeking discomfort, the second you walk in there, and you're like, all right, bye bye, and then you have a candle that's lit, and then you can partially see what's going on. Once you blow it out, that's when it kind of starts, and no one is definitely that comfortable with the dark. Like you might be okay with it, but it's like cold weather. Are you really gonna be comfortable with cold? No. I mean, it's healing. It has its own aspects of healing
Yeah.
for your nervous system. You would know,
Mm.
but yeah, you're automatically you just you're uncomfortable from that point. But I was okay. Like even that whole day, my body was fine. But I was like, do I really want to be alone for another 5 days or 4 days? And the answer was no. I was like, okay, then maybe I should just let myself out, and that's what I did.
Mhm.
You know, I'm cool with that. But I
Yeah.
tried it for a day. I do want to come back and do 3 days though, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what would you say you would how would you approach it differently? Like between now and the time that you'll re-enter, what do you
Um,
feel you need to, I don't know, look at or
Probably meditate in the dark.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Oh, is it raining?
That's
That's cool.
beautiful. I
Yeah,
thought that
that
was
is.
coming in from the headphones. Like
Nah,
this
nah,
sounds
nah,
so
nah. It's
nice.
not that fancy. um, it's that like it's perfect timing with the question.
Yeah.
I would definitely meditate in the dark, and I mean now I know what I'm getting myself into. So 3 days I can do. But first I wasn't sure. I thought I was coming out Sunday, and you're like, oh, you're coming out Monday. I was like, holy crap, I'm gonna be there for that long. And like right off the bat, I was gonna say I don't want to be in here that long. But like, you just left, and I was like, yeah, I don't want to say that, and I'll see how long I can ride it out for. But I just kind of like did that 24 hours just to know what's going on. And yeah, I did get to know myself better, and like my sense of smell opened up, and I know I'm a people person. So, but I could definitely do 3 days, and one thing I could do is probably plan out my trip better so I know exactly what I'm in for. Or
Mm.
I could just fly to Guatemala for 1 week, like, okay, so this is my intention, fly in and fly out. Not that I'm
Yeah.
on vacation.
You mentioned something about anxiety, which you didn't really you wouldn't have considered yourself an anxious person before
Yeah,
this, correct?
yeah, I'm definitely not. I mean, I still don't think that I am, but like in that situation, I guess like yeah, I had some like thoughts, and then it developed into anxiety, and I was like, holy crap, I want to get out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So what advice would you give someone that does experience anxiety? Because just speaking broadly, like most of our population has anxiety with, and I don't want to say is an anxious person, right? I just said that and I'm kind of backtracking of like we label ourselves as these things. Like most of us experience anxiety
yeah, yeah.
at
So
some points, but a lot of our population right now is moving through a lot more anxiety than in the past, right? Just of the state of our world, what's going
right,
on, the
things are moving faster.
uncertainty.
Yeah,
Yeah, so this is so normal to come here into a space where you're like, finally I get to be by myself. And then you're eventually by yourself and you're like, whoa, shit, I'm anxious.
yeah,
But I've never been anxious before. Well, yeah, because we're constantly stimulated. And so, yeah, some anxiety is
yeah.
probably going to come up. So, yeah, what would you say to somebody that
Um,
experiences anxiety and maybe wants to do a dark retreat?
I would say maybe do like a breath class, do some more breathing. That's what I did. Yeah, because breathing really does help. Like honestly, that's
It's
how you
huge.
get control of your nervous system. That's what I was doing.
Mm.
I got a little bit of anxiety, like midday, and also taking a cold shower really helps. And you mentioned that right before you left. I was like, yeah, it's a great idea. I do cold
Yeah.
baths all the time, so that really helps you calm down. And just know why you're going in there. I think my why
Mm,
was a little skewed. I didn't really have a good sense of why.
yeah.
Because honestly, I just want to have like a psychedelic experience. And I was like, but it was at that moment where it was like getting the end of the day after like that 24-hour mark, where I was like, dude, do I really need a psychedelic experience? And the answer was no. I'm like, well, what if I had one? What would that change in my life? And I'm like, well, really, it wouldn't change anything, because I'm happy where I am in life. And at that point, I was like, okay, so this is not serving me the way I thought it would. So I just kind of need
Okay.
to get out.
The why.
The why.
So
You need to have a why,
huge.
like really need to have a really strong why. If you're gonna lock yourself up in a room, and it is very intense, and it is unlike anything you would probably expect, You need to have a really, 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 really strong why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tuning in, obviously, which I honor you for as well, to feel called to go back in there. In this moment, I'm sure it will change, but in this moment, why do you feel called to go back into the dark?
Well, it's something. If I start something, I tend to finish it. So that's just me. Like I will go back and conquer my whatever that anxiety was. Just like, hey, you know what? I'm just gonna do this.
You want
And
to face it.
yeah, I want to face it for sure. I want to face it. When you asked me, do you want to go back there sometime? I was like, no.
I
At
know
that, like this week, I'm like, nah, I'm good.
the
But
next day, just so you guys know, the next day, or no, the day when he came out, I was, he
I
got
was a
some
little out of it.
tea.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah.
I
I
was
was
like,
like, I just
okay,
want some
take your
tea.
time, do whatever. And just so you know, you have the room available to you the next couple of days. So if you'd like to go back in for an hour, the room is yours. And you were like, no, I'm not now. Thanks. Nope.
Yeah,
I was
like
like,
no.
okay.
And your sense of your thoughts are a little skewed too, right? When you get out, it's just a little weird because you're asking me a bunch of questions. I was like, I don't want to go back. Like I'm good. And you appreciate color a lot more, like a lot more, because I was starting to forget color, and my thoughts were like black and white. That's a little strange.
Hmm.
Yeah, I was starting to forget what color looks like. So when I got out and I saw the color green, I was like, oh, this is awesome. Yeah,
Hmm.
so you appreciate the most mundane, fundamental things like color and smell,
Yeah.
which is something I gained from it. So
I think that's a big theme across all of the experiences I've heard in my own as well. Um, is this gratitude reset,
it is.
to see everything anew again, like you're seeing it for the first time, and it's like coming out. I also was in there like a
Yeah,
day
yeah,
after you came out. I went
yeah.
in for about 3 nights, and just for a little reset, and it was just to come out and be like, "Are you kidding me? I get to experience this."
Yeah.
It's such a gratitude reset.
How was it for you? Was it like okay? Is it become easier the second time and third time in?
Oh no.
No,
My first time was actually, I wouldn't say easy, but was quite a blissful
like more
experience.
smooth.
It was very, yeah, I mean, I definitely had like some difficult thoughts ish, but I was also coming off, we talked about breath work. I was coming off of an 11-day breath work kriya I had just done with my breath work teacher. So my body was so oxygenated at that
Mm-hmm.
point, and I don't know if some of you may practice a certain kriya, but it's basically this kind of practice of um, is this certain devotional aspect to like a practice, and the specific one that I did here, it really elevates your consciousness so much to where you get, like, the veil is so thin between reality and what you think you're perceiving. So like immediately when I think something on this breathwork
Yeah,
experience, I'm like, oh, like I can see it. It's so quick. It's like the awareness is just heightened by 1,000.
because you have more oxygen in your brain, and it
Yes,
changes your perception.
you're so present. So long story short, I could go on about that. That's a whole other thing as well about that kriya. But I went in there like 2 days after I'd finished this 11-day kriya, and I just felt so at peace and so like out of my own way that I feel like I was able to, I don't know, my experience was just completely different. And so my first round was like so much light, so much love, like tears of gratitude in there, like honestly like loving the dark. Like I was
Good.
like sipping tea in there, feeling happy as a clam. My next round and this last round were a bit more challenging and actually shorter. The dark room was open for 3 nights and 2 days, so it was half the time basically than my first one. And yeah, it was a bit harder. My mind was a bit busier, and really you go in there and like your experience, you really start to see the nature of the mind, the future, the planning, the thoughts that come up that are like, this is scary and trying to
Yeah.
protect you, and all the things that you maybe haven't done and that you need to do. And it's just like, damn, my mind is crazy. And if you let yourself, just in meditation, not even in the dark, sit with yourself long enough, you can really start to see the nature of it and not take it so seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
And
it's
also,
huge.
it's not a hotel room, so the nights when you get more nights doesn't matter. It's the days that are prolonged. So the nights you can sleep, it's the days.
Yes, and after about, it depends on each person. So this isn't
Uh
for
huh.
everyone. But usually after the second day, you don't really, your body's basically gotten all the sleep it needs, and you really kind of stop sleeping a lot.
Really?
Yeah. So I went in there like recently, for example, the first night I was in there, I slept like 15 hours. I was like,
I slept like
whoa.
12, 13.
Yeah. The body is just like, oh God, okay. The
Yeah.
melatonin. And then after the first 2 days, I was maybe sleeping 2 to 3 hours a night, because what happens is, again, like you're rested. And so it's almost like your body doesn't really need to sleep anymore, because you're not getting stimulated. It's not exhausted. It's the mind that's like, okay, just sleep so I can pass this time. But the consciousness is like, I am awake.
Mm.
I know one of the guys that went in there for the 49 days. He basically, I think, after the first week was sleeping like maybe an hour or two a night.
Wow. But
And
how does he know you sleep an hour or two a night?
you can kind of tell by the time, right? When you
Yeah.
start to hear the birds chirp in the
Yeah,
morning.
yeah.
So you can hear. It's not completely
I mean,
sensory.
really, the only thing you hear is like the bird chirp or the crickets.
Yep,
You don't hear anything else.
exactly.
Um, I know some people take like audio and they listen to meditations, guided meditations. Do you recommend that too?
In the dark.
Yeah.
So typically, our experience of the dark is you're going in there, you don't have electronics, it's completely stimulus free.
Hmm.
And I feel personally there are exceptions. If a person is really needing some level of support to help them expand their capacity to be present in the dark,
Yeah.
then sometimes we make exceptions for things. But typically, the typical experience is no, you're not taking anything in there with you. You're going in, and usually there are experienced meditators going in there, right? Of
Yeah.
like, okay, I know how to be with myself, and now I'm going to go be with myself in the pitch black, right?
Hmm. I
So,
don't think it was more of the pitch black that bothered me. It was the isolation of people,
yeah,
which was that's something I learned too. Yeah, it was just the isolation of people. Like, dude, there's no one around. There's no one I could call
yeah,
or chat with. And I like being around people. Like, you
yeah.
know how some people. I mean, I like being myself by myself too to recharge. But some people just like being around people. That's me. Like during work, I'm around people like 10 hours a day.
I mean, that's a big part of how our nervous system regulates and functions, co-regulating. We need people.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's, of course, it's a challenge to go in there and isolate yourself. It brings up
yeah.
a lot of aloneness, a lot of abandonment, a lot of what am I even here for if I'm not here to connect? And so, yeah, I can see that brought up a lot. It does.
Yeah, it does. Do you have any advice for people that are going in for the first time and they have like all these preconceived notions, or just breathe?
Yeah, always breathe. Wow, there's so much. There's so much. I think we went over quite a bit in
Yeah,
the
we did.
first episode.
Yeah, we did.
I will say, I think it depends on the person. And across, if I were to say one thing across all spectrums, listen to yourself, but you need to meditate in order to know what yourself is,
Yeah,
right? It's like listen and honor yourself. And there are those thoughts that come up that aren't you. And so there's just this real fine discernment of like, when is something, it's such a fine line of when is something supporting me and when is it not. Um, so yeah, I guess I think in the very first episode, my advice was, yeah, let go of all of your expectations
yeah,
and
for sure.
really, ask yourself, are you willing to receive what you need and maybe not what you want,
Got it.
and see
Cool.
what happens.
And that's a great way to end this episode. Right on. Thank you again, Bishop.
Yeah, thank
I actually
you.
do recommend the Hermitage for the dark
I
meditation.
actually do recommend.
No, no, I do. Well, for me, it was nerve wracking a little bit just being in there.
Of
But it's. I
course.
think everyone should try it.
Yeah.
Like even like if you sign up, I think you should start with the lowest one, unless you're an avid meditator and you know what you've been doing for like 20 years. Then you should push it. But yeah, you should definitely come and try it out. Because I know a
Mm.
lot of people are curious. They're asking me, "Hey, how did it go? This, that," and I was like, "Dude, I lasted like 24 hours." And they're like, "You actually lasted that long?" I was like, "Yeah." So,
Mm.
but I recommend it to everyone. I'll put the information up again.
Great.
And
And even just for silence, like not being in the dark, but a lot of people come here just for silence, and
that
that's
too.
equally as profound, to be in the light of day and not being able to talk
Yeah.
to people. Like silence. Oh my gosh. It's so healing. And we're talking about know thyself.
Yeah. Yeah. definitely.
So maybe the next step is come do a silent retreat with
Now I'm
us.
gonna try and do 3 days if I try. Not if I when I try.
Okay.
I'm gonna try and do the 3 days for sure. Not about 5 or 8, but some girl did like 10. But you know what she was telling me? It's funny. Last night she's like, I see ghosts and I came to face it. And I was like, really?
Yeah.
And I was like, how did that go? She's like, it actually went pretty good. I was like, okay. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a good way to end this episode. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Bishop.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Hermitage. And we'll catch you next time.